Robert Kuok wakes at 5 in the morning, sits in complete silence, and has done this every single day for decades. He is 102 years old, worth nearly $12 billion, and still tracking global sugar markets from Hong Kong. Here's what nobody talks about when they talk about the world's oldest billionaires. These men didn't optimize their mornings for productivity. They optimized them for survival across a century. And the difference between those two goals is the entire point of this video. We spend a lot of time asking what the ultra-wealthy eat, what supplements they take, what doctors they hire. But the men who've actually crossed into their 90s and 100s in Asia, they built something different. They built a morning architecture so consistent, so sequenced, that it ran whether markets crashed or empires expanded. And before we get to what they eat, I want you to hold on to one idea. This video isn't really about food. What you're about to see is the structure underneath the food. And that structure is what the research keeps pointing to. Let's start at 5 in the morning. Habit 1. 5 a.m. Stillness before anything else. Robert Kuok's documented routine begins not with action, but with the deliberate absence of it. Before any market check, before any conversation, before the day makes its demands, he sits, quietly, for 10 to 15 minutes. This isn't meditation in the Western therapeutic sense. In traditional Chinese thinking, the hours just before sunrise are when the body's yang energy begins its natural rise. Moving into that transition with stillness rather than noise is considered a way of aligning with the body's own momentum rather than fighting it. Western science has a different name for what's happening in those same minutes. The cortisol awakening response is a natural spike in cortisol that occurs within 30 minutes of waking. It's the body's built-in activation signal. How you enter that window matters. Light exposure, temperature, and sensory input all shape whether that cortisol curve primes you for the day or floods you with early stress. Sitting in quiet darkness, as Kuok does, lets that curve rise on its own terms. The body wakes itself up. You don't force it. 1 practice, 2 frameworks, both pointing at the same outcome. And here's what's worth noting. Kuok has done this for decades, not occasionally, not during slower periods, every single day. That consistency is itself a form of biological signal. The body learns what's coming. Habit 2. Warm water on an empty stomach. Before any food, before tea, before anything complex enters the system, there's a single cup of warm water, not hot, warm. This practice runs through Greater Chinese households from Hong Kong to Kuala Lumpur to Penang with quiet consistency. Traditional Chinese medicine frames it around protecting the spleen and kidney systems, the paired organs associated with foundational energy and fluid regulation. The Western framing is simpler. After 7 or 8 hours without fluid, the digestive system is essentially paused. A warm cup of water signals the gut to begin enzyme production, prepares the stomach lining, and ends the overnight fast gently rather than abruptly. Cold water at that moment would trigger a mild thermal shock response. Warm water works with the system instead of against it. It costs nothing. It takes 30 seconds. And every elder in this story does some version of it. Habit 3. Tai Chi or Qigong for 15 to 20 minutes. Cho Yaw, who chaired UOB into his 90s and remained a daily practitioner of slow movement until his passing in 2024, embodied a pattern that runs deep across Singaporean establishment families. Slow, deliberate, low-impact movement has been a fixture of Hong Kong and Singaporean elite households for generations, not as fitness culture, but as morning ritual built into the schedule the way business meetings are built into the afternoon. What Western sports science eventually confirmed about Tai Chi is that it does three things simultaneously that most forms of exercise can't. It provides light cardiovascular activation. It trains balance and proprioception, which deteriorates sharply in older bodies without specific practice. And the breathwork embedded in the movement produces the same parasympathetic activation as dedicated meditation. One system, three benefits, no equipment, no injury risk. These first three habits share something that no Western medical guideline has fully codified yet. They're not treatments, they're conditions. Each one creates the physiological state that makes the next habit more effective. And that sequencing, it's exactly what we need to talk about when we get to what these men actually eat. Because the breakfast is coming, but the breakfast is not the point. If this is the kind of analysis you want more of, subscribe to Asian Status now. Every video goes this deep on how Asia's oldest families actually think and live. Habit 4, the breakfast itself. And here's where Asian elite households diverge most sharply from what Western performance culture has decided a high achiever's morning should look like. The breakfast these men eat is small, warm, and deliberately plain. Congee, which is a slow-cooked rice porridge with pickled vegetables on the side. Sometimes a preserved egg, sometimes fermented tofu. The specific ingredients vary by family and region. What doesn't vary is the temperature and the texture. Everything is warm, everything is soft. Nothing is raw, cold, or processed. Pallonji Mistry, the late Indian-Irish construction magnate who built one of the most durable industrial legacies in Asia, maintained a household in Mumbai where warm food arrived at the table first, always, regardless of season. His family documented this as an ingrained domestic standard rather than a diet plan. It was simply how mornings worked. Traditional Asian medicine has a clear explanation for why cold food in the morning is a problem. The digestive system in early morning is considered to be in a low-fire state. The spleen and stomach need warmth to activate. Cold food in this framework forces the body to spend energy heating what you've just put into it before it can do anything useful with it. You're borrowing energy to process the very thing that was supposed to give you energy. Western gut science arrives at something compatible from a different direction. Research on the gut microbiome in the last decade has shown that cold processed foods in the morning, consumed quickly and under stress, produce a different inflammatory response than warm, easily digested foods consumed slowly. The microbiome itself responds to the thermal and structural complexity of what it receives. A congee breakfast feeds the gut a signal of calm. A cold protein shake eaten at a standing desk while reading emails sends a different signal entirely. That Western executive breakfast, cold shake, black coffee, eaten in under 4 minutes while triaging a full inbox, creates a different physiological context, not just a different food choice. The nervous system is already in reactive mode before the first calorie lands, and that context shapes how every nutrient in that shake actually gets absorbed and used. These men do the opposite. The breakfast comes after stillness, after movement, after the body has already been gently activated. The gut is ready. The nervous system is calm. The food lands in a prepared system, not a stressed one. Habit 5. Tea, not coffee. Robert Kuok's documented preference runs to Pu-erh, the aged, fermented tea produced in Yunnan province that has been part of Chinese trading culture for centuries. Pu-erh is not the same as green tea or black tea. The fermentation process produces a probiotic profile closer to a cultured food than a standard beverage. Polyphenol research published over the last decade has confirmed cardiovascular and metabolic benefits that traditional Chinese households have been experiencing without naming since the 1950s. The stimulation curve is also different. Pu-erh and aged oolong release their caffeine more slowly than coffee, bound within a matrix of other compounds that moderate absorption. There's no spike, there's no crash 2 hours later. The alertness is quieter and longer. Kuok doesn't drink coffee. He never has, as far as the documented record shows. And at 102, his morning energy doesn't come from cortisol borrowed against tomorrow. It comes from a system that's been gently charged since 5 a.m. What you put in matters, but when you put it in and what state the body is in when it receives it, that matters more, which is exactly what habits 6 and 7 are built around. Habit 6, family before business, every single morning, before any phone call, before any market briefing, before the workday assembles itself around demands and decisions. The men in this story sit with their families. This wasn't a scheduled wellness practice. It wasn't a productivity hack somebody read about in a business book. Across Filipino-Chinese Taipan households in Manila and Greater Chinese families in Singapore and Hong Kong, morning family conversation was simply the first thing that happened. Business came after, always. The Tata and Birla families in India built something even more deliberate around this. Morning family councils, brief but consistent gatherings where elders and the next generation shared the same table before the day pulled everyone in different directions. Not a formal meeting, not a performance. A daily confirmation that the family, not the enterprise, was the primary institution. Wealth existed to serve the family. The family didn't exist to serve the wealth. That distinction runs deep in Indian industrial house culture, and it shaped the daily schedule in ways that outlasted individual business cycles. What strikes you when you look at this habit across cultures is that nobody was doing it for health reasons. There's no documented evidence that Pallonji Mistry started his mornings with family because he'd read a paper on cognitive longevity. The practice predates that research by generations. It was a value system expressing itself as a daily routine. But the Singapore longitudinal aging studies tracked something that lines up precisely with what these households were already doing. Daily face-to-face social engagement, not digital contact, not occasional gatherings, but consistent daily interaction with familiar people correlates with measurably slower cognitive decline in older adults. The mechanism runs through reduced cortisol, sustained neural activation from conversation, and the sense of relational continuity that keeps the brain anchored to present experience rather than retreating inward. These men weren't engineering their cognitive longevity. They were living inside a value system that happened to produce it. The health benefit arrived as a side effect of something they considered far more important. Habit 7. Reading and reflection before any reactive communication begins. Kuok's documented daily practice of reading market correspondence and news isn't framed in his memoir as leisure or even as work preparation. It's closer to a ritual, deliberate, unhurried, done before he responds to anything or anyone outside the household. The distinction between reading and reacting is central here. Most modern mornings begin with reaction, checking what the world sent overnight and immediately responding to it. Kuok's morning runs in the opposite direction. He absorbs first. He decides what matters. Then he engages. The Billionaire family elders added a layer to this that the Chinese tradition didn't emphasize as explicitly. Spiritual reading, brief passages from texts that grounded the day in something larger than the next transaction, sat alongside business correspondence in their morning routines. Two entirely different cultural traditions arriving at the same structural habit. 30 minutes of deliberate, inward reading before the outward day begins. Neuroscience frames this as the difference between default mode, network activation, and task-positive network activation. Reading without pressure activates the reflective brain. Reactive communication activates the threat response brain. Starting the day in reflection rather than reaction sets the neurological tone for every decision that follows. 7 habits, 2 regions, decades of consistent practice. And now, the question the research keeps circling back to isn't which of these habits matters most. It's something about the order they happen in, because the sequence itself turns out to be the thing nobody's been talking about. So here's what 7 habits across 2 regions and multiple generations of documented practice actually point to. Most longevity content tells you what to eat. These men suggest you should focus instead on the hour around the eating. The food is incidental, the structure is the medicine. That's the insight that keeps getting buried under supplement stacks and superfood rankings. The congee isn't magic. The Pu-erh tea isn't magic. What's doing the actual work is the sequence those things sit inside. Stillness before movement. Movement before food. Food before tea. Family before business. Reflection before reaction. Each habit creates the physiological and psychological conditions that make the next one land properly. Remove any single step, and the chain loses integrity. Add them back in order, and you have something closer to a biological operating system than a morning checklist. The Okinawa Centenarian Study, one of the longest-running longevity research programs in the world, spent decades documenting what its oldest subjects had in common. The findings kept returning to the same structural features. Daily, low-intensity movement. Consistent social contact with familiar people. Purposeful morning routines that prioritized calm engagement before any high-demand activity. Researchers framed these as correlates of longevity. What they were actually describing, without using the term, was the architecture these Asian elite households had been running quietly since the 1950s. The science caught up. These men just never stopped. And that's the part Western performance culture hasn't absorbed yet. The version of morning optimization that dominates business media is built around extraction. Get more from fewer hours. Front-load productivity. Maximize output before the world interrupts you. Every habit in that model is optimized for a shorter time frame. Robert Kuok, Cho Yaw, Pallonji Mistry's household, the Billionaire family elders, none of them were optimizing for the quarter. They were running a system designed to still be functional at 95. The time frame changes everything about what the morning should do. A system built for 1 decade looks nothing like a system built for 10. And the men who built systems for 10 decades, whether they articulated it this way or not, understood that the morning isn't where you extract performance. It's where you protect the capacity to perform tomorrow, and the day after that, and the year after that. That's the real inheritance here. Not the tea, not the congee, not even the stillness at 5 in the morning, though that's where it starts. The inheritance is the understanding that the body is an institution, and institutions require consistent governance, not occasional heroics. These men didn't stumble into their 90s and hundreds. They built a system before anyone called it a system, and they never stopped running it. Now, I want to hear from you. Of these 7 habits, which one already exists in your morning without you knowing it had a name? Drop the habit number below. The answers are genuinely interesting, and they shape what we cover next on this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Every video on Asian status goes this deep because the stories behind Asian wealth and longevity deserve more than surface coverage. We'll see you in the next one.